Welcome to Jasiri, where bold voices meet big ideas for a better Africa. Today, we turn our attention to one of the most urgent and complex conversations of our time, the just transition. As the world races to cut emissions and shift to cleaner energy, what does that mean for Nigeria and the rest of Africa, where millions still lack access to electricity and where the informal energy economy, often powered by firewood and kerosene, is still the daily reality for many households? Can we leapfrog into a greener future without leaving the most vulnerable behind? What does justice look like when climate ambition meets economic inequality? And who gets to decide? From energy equity to gender inclusion, policy gaps to grassroots innovation, today's conversation is about making sure that the future we build is not only sustainable, but fair. But first, I'm really proud of all the work we do here on News Central, and very proud to sit across from these ladies 5 days a week to bring you Jasiri. Now, you know, we recently launched on GoTV Channel 23, and we've been spreading the gospel of News Central. If you haven't seen Jasiri, Breakfast Central, Breakfast Extra, or any of our other shows on buses, please be on the lookout and send your pictures. Did you see how fun we were? Lolo, why are you doing like that? And send your pictures and videos when you see them. Lolo has also been out for a road show, and now guess what? We're headed to radio! Yay! So you can catch us on radio today. We'll be on 95.1 Wazobia at 2 p.m. today, and then we'll be on 99.3 Nigeria Info at 2:45 p.m. So please tune in and make sure you don't miss. I know, Lolo, say whatever you want to say very quickly.
I'm so excited. You know, it's so nice when people say, I see you. You know, I went and the people will say, I see you. I went to Warri for the weekend, and you know, when people actually stop me, and sometimes it takes them a while to remember, you're on that show. And I say, Jasiri. Yes, on News Central. Like, okay, thank you so much.
There's a video of a bus. Do you see a billboard? Have you ever seen
billboard,
such a fine billboard before?
The billboard almost put me in trouble. Years ago, I took a cab and the cab turned.
I
usually pay before I get to where I'm going, like just few minutes before I get there. So I already sent him the money. And I looked at the billboard and I said, thank God I paid.
Lola has a story, but she'll share it tomorrow. Let's hold the story. But it's been fantastic with all the stuff we're doing. So we're taking it up a notch. We're on radio today, so make sure you tune in.
Make sure you tune in. All right, I guess this is now but second. For the 2025 Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination, the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board, JAM, is reporting that over 1.5 million candidates, approximately 78%, scored below 200 out of a possible 400 points. Now, out of 1,955,069 available results, only 12,414 candidates, about 0.63%, scored above 300, while 420,415 candidates, around 22%, scored above 200. Now, JAM said that 97 candidates were involved in examination infractions and 2,157 candidates are under investigation for suspected malpractices. Additionally, 71,701 candidates were absent from the examination. Among 40,247 underage candidates who were allowed to sit for the exam as exceptional candidates, only 467, about 1.16%, achieved scores meeting the threshold for exceptional ability. Now, these statistics highlight ongoing challenges in Nigeria's education system, emphasizing the need for reforms to improve student performance and uphold examination integrity. Last year, out of 1.9 million candidates who sat the 2024 UTME, only 8,000 candidates, or 0.5%, scored above 300 points in the examination. 24% of candidates scored above 200 and 76% scored below 200.
Hell. Please, we need to go back to that because I think it really needs to land for people. Over 1.5 million candidates, that's 78%, scored below 200. And 200 is the minimum cutoff mark, correct?
For some courses,
for some courses.
They stagger it across.
Yeah, but most people use 200 as somewhat of a base level. 78% scored less
than 200. What are we teaching?
Hey, but what can't you look at the whole the whole educational climate? Look at our schools. Everybody is just doing as they like. The government is focusing on so many other things and not focusing on education as they should. We're even talking about curriculum, that our curriculum is still outdated. Do you know, I would ask Nimi sometimes, I would ask him, who is the governor of this, who is the governor of that? He has no idea. And I'll have to take it upon myself to buy
those like current affairs I remember.
But I remember, I would never forget that some of these people, it's the prominence of what they do that make you remember them. Because they do something exceptional. We used to sing songs about all the governors of Lagos in Nigeria, all the states. It was so exciting. But right now, how many of our children are still getting that kind of education?
So actually,
the teachers are not fighting for the fact that they don't have. Do you know, because they are not being paid well, it shows in how they teach the children. Even private schools are not even exonerated.
Wait, so I want to ask the two of you, because you had kids who recently did this UTME. What was their feedback on the process of the exam? So now it's completely computer-based, right? Yeah. So what was their feedback? Because is it a process issue? Is it a computer issue? Is it a curriculum issue? Let's break it down. It may not just be one issue. Catherine?
It's not a curriculum issue in its entirety. It's also children's discipline and leaning toward education. Children prefer social media. They're on TikTok most of the time. I think we had a conversation in the makeup room when I said that when my youngest went to write the exams, I was seeing there were even children smoking Indian hemp at my yes, 3 boys. They were smoking.
They were smoking Indian hemp at the center that you...
And other parents who you know, they have different categories. They have batches of the 6:30s, the 9 a.m.s, the 12 noons, and the 2 p.m.s. So by the time the 9 a.m.s, for example, are writing, the ones for noon have begun to trickle in. And so it's those ones that are, you would expect them to be going through the books or question and answers. But there they were. I was just observing them. They were on their phones. 3 boys, teenage boys, were smoking Indian hemp. So parents, I looked at other parents to see who will
if anybody will say anything.
I see my son's go.
Nobody reacted to that. So it's just like, this is what the world has turned into. So apart from curriculum issues that Lolo has raised, and the jackpine and the dearth of teachers in private and public institutions, this also is a reflection of where the heads of our young children are these days. That's
so,
for me.
Because my own son, half of the time is the lack of enthusiasm for me. You see a lot of children now, they don't take education as seriously.
Do you know why? Do you know why? Korede has told me she doesn't need to go to school to make money.
I was going to tell you
because now they see that they don't have to go to school to become and something and make money. My almost 10-year-old tomorrow has told me that multiple times this year. I keep looking at her like, it's not in this house.
It took me right out of my mouth.
That's seeping in from the West, because I had a friend. I have a friend who's in the UK, and she called me in straight, and she said her first daughter just told her, must she go to university? That you can make money from anywhere. Nowadays, people have the youth now have YouTube channels, and they are prominent on social media, TikTok accounts of over 9 million houses, and they're buying houses, taking care of.
They're employed.
So they're asking. So she said she felt challenged, and just as you said, she said, over my dead body is not me, it's not in my house.
I will wake up and I will haunt you. The quality of education and who gives them. Sometimes the lack of enthusiasm is a mixture of many things. The distraction of social media is big, and the lack of enthusiasm from even the teachers, the motivation to teach. Do you know how then they would even sequester some children? They would put them aside knowing that, oh, they need extra lessons because the teachers were attentive. Because now, I won't lie to you, many of the teachers are doing side also. Even in many schools, they'll call parents on the corner and say, if you want us to really adequately focus on your child, let me be taking them extra lessons and extra this, extra that. So you pay all those other things to get focus for your children. So it's not like a well-rounded education. And now many schools will just focus on academics only.
But let me also shock you, Lolo. Some parents, I was talking to someone who runs a tutorial because of, the fact that our children, and I hear what you say about parents having to go the extra mile. You pay for extra classes, you have to schedule, you have to run your children on a routine that is full of discipline. And your eyes have to be on the ball, as with your child, who is the student. But guess what? Parents also help to these things. Do you know that I was speaking to someone because I needed him for my radio show, and he was saying that, Mom, it will shock you that parents are actually aiding and abetting the children.
Of course.
You will aid the child not to study, bad parenting, knowing that money, insofar as you have money, can fix everything. So I had to pause when he said that.
I think I do agree. There's a lot of distraction, to be honest. But then I would also say that the distractions are not just social media and the online distractions. But we still have students who are serious about education. We still have students who are graduating with first class, like we interviewed the other time. But I figured that I'm not, and this is not me trying to blame it on poverty or the economy, but these days it's just a struggle to either get into school, survive school, or just graduate. So those that can't afford the school fees are struggling to get into school. Those that can afford it are struggling to survive in school. So I think that in itself is also distracting enough, because the children see the struggles of the parents. Parents are paying school fees and they're now lamenting in the next 3 months we have to pay school fees again. And the children see this and they're struggling. Some are just in school drinking garri. They're not thinking about academics. They're just thinking of graduating and surviving. So I think that also is a contributing factor, to be honest.
And I asked about, because this is a computer-based test now, there were some places, some students who complained about having issues with their computers. This is a video that was trending on social media. System no work. It don't turn war, so they apparently destroyed a lot of the things in this particular system. And I'm just thinking back to when I wrote ACT and SAT. So in the US, there's a pre-ACT and a pre-SAT. These are the two main exams that get you scores into university. You start from 8th grade. 8th grade is like, I think, about 14. You know their years are different because a lot of people graduate about 16 here. You start taking pre, so you're used to the format. They use that for state testing. They do pre, yes. Too. And then I'm just thinking about, we did it in school. It was a regular school day. It was just a school day that you knew that juniors and seniors were taking ACT or they're taking SAT. And then some people are in the gym, but you're in your school. You didn't have to go to any other place to take these exams. And it's not saying that that's the whole, that's just, we have to look at it holistically. And I'll come back to one thing I say. While I agree with the struggle, with the fight that ASU fights a lot of the times for better working conditions for lecturers, I think Nigeria is making a very big mistake by not focusing on secondary school education. Our fight should be to have more people graduate at a standard from secondary school rather than a focus on university. We're still having the dichotomy, as we like to say, between HND and BSc and all of that. We need to focus on making sure that at a minimum, people are graduating secondary school with basics in reading, writing, math. Remember when we had Dr. Joy Issa the other time, and about a large percentage of 17 to 15-year-olds in this country cannot read and write adequately.
But the thing is,
and those are the ones who are taking this test. So how are they supposed to pass?
Have you heard the English our students speak on the street?
Can we even tell you that English doesn't?
This guy
does not bring
told me,
money.
he said, Ma, I asked, out of a number of children, he said, I asked them to spell embarrassment. They didn't get it right.
Did they even pronounce it?
Embarrassment. They didn't get it right. You're writing oral English. You're doing
comprehension.
You're doing theory and comprehension and summary and letter writing. Then you're doing all the whole
but we wrote those things. But now with CBT for most of these things,
but
they're just clicking.
It's there.
And I'm just saying that, you see, we're doing a lot of injustice to our children generally. They keep saying that, it has to be holistic. That means from home to school, back home, and a well-rounded education. But even me, I'm still talking about curriculum. This thing that Olu pointed out, that a lot of students, they will tell us, they should either do IT or technical drawing or home economics. There should be things like photography, agric. They take agric, but some of these things that they can use as life skills. I just found out that most schools just push every child towards home economics.
So this thing you say about life skills, social media, you see it, things are changing. So there's a, I think it's like a middle school in the US, the middle school is like JSS here, and they are actually putting the students to work. So they're teaching them about finances, about check and balance, account statements, because they're finding out that you're graduating students who, a lot of them, they by 18 you're on your own. They don't know how to pay for their first apartments. They don't know how to build credit. They are contextualizing an aspect of the education for the society they live in. We need to contextualize a part of our education system for the society we live in. But I also want to say this. I saw it and I knew it was going to come up. In March of this year, China mandated AI education across primary and secondary schools. So starting from the first semester, the fall semester of September 1st, 2025, students will receive a minimum of 8 hours of AI education per academic year, starting with primary school. So aside from the fact that we're playing catch up, it's just catch up. We can't even do anything else.
That one is,
I always say we're playing catch up. They want to try to stabilize, but we're playing catch up.
If they're saying that we should use AI education, how many parents can even afford data?
No.
For
They should be done in school. It should be part of the package. But when you talk about this, Dr. Joy Issa, we asked her last time, when was the last curriculum meeting to make adjustments to the curriculum in Nigeria? She said she can't even remember.
Exactly.
That's how you see. So people
I keep hammering on this curriculum thing.
We are a government unto ourselves. Curriculum, whether it's not given in the child in school, parents are taking it upon themselves to make sure that the kids, that's why children don't have playtimes anymore.
Yes.
There's a child is studying from morning till night. You come back, they are on a clock, I tell you. So when they come back, you'll be shocked that this AI, parents are going to start doing it individually.
Of course. What are you saying?
They're sending their kids to
my son has he leans towards animation. My youngest, he's always talking animation. Except he comes home for holiday. That means I'm going to have to remove all the playthings and look for how I will find a place for my son to target his passion. So if parents are now taking it upon themselves, even in waste down on the children, when they graduate, it's half. That means if you are investing a lot in your child, that child is overqualified for class, in a class where all the others don't even understand half of what is being said.
Let's take reactions. We have to go on a break. Let's take a quick look at reactions from this. Okay, this is Peter Obi, former presidential candidate of the Labour Party in the 2023 elections. It's a long read, but I'll just read part of what he wrote. The first part is, of course, just detailing again the numbers. He says the latest JAM results once again highlight the consequences of decades of underinvestment in education, a sector that should be central to our national development strategy. He talked about national university enrollment, all that, similarly using Bangladesh and Turkey. I have consistently said it, education is not just a social service, it is a strategic investment. It is the most critical driver of national development and the most powerful tool for lifting people out of poverty. We must now invest aggressively in education at all levels if we are serious about building a prosperous, secure, and equitable Nigeria. Let's keep going on the reactions. Before you blame the students, just know that the economy is affecting these students. So many can't read due to hunger. Some parents can't even afford study materials. No light to study. Hope the ones their laptop shut down or didn't work follow for this number, because I have a neighbor that came back crying that her device didn't work until around 10 minutes to the end of the exam. So JAM is supposed to resit her. The hardship is too much. The search for the next meal has taken over every family members to the extent no one gets time to read or do other things. So sad, Nigeria. So sad. At JAM HQ should be scrapped. Let admission be based on institutions' discretion, or bring up a non-examination assessment body that will oversee admission by just O-level rating. Pick 3 schools, upload your O-level, and the school should develop templates.
Another angle.
This isn't on the government, but parents. Many parents have failed in their duties. Simple. And finally, let's take this last one. Then JAM should know that they also failed with the students. They have to investigate the cause of this mass failure. This is likened to a lecturer after a semester's exam, all his students failed. This is an error, not from the students who sat for the exam, but the institution. We'll leave it at that for now, and it's really causing a lot of retrospective thinking for many across Nigeria. But let's remember one thing. The teachers that are teaching these students, if we're not investing in them, they teach doctors, they teach lawyers, they teach engineers. It's a pipeline, and we're not feeding that pipeline well. We're going to take a quick time out. When we come back, we switch conversations. Stay with us. As the world races towards a greener future, one buzzword keeps popping up: just transition. But for Africa, where millions still live without electricity, where climate change is already devastating farms and homes, and where inequality runs deep, what does a just transition really look like? Is it about phasing out fossil fuels, or about making sure no one gets left behind as the global economy changes? Today on Jasiri, we're joined by a man who's worked at the intersection of sustainability, policy, and people's real lives for over 2 decades. Dr. Bankole Allibay is an environmental, social, and governance expert, a leading consultant on sustainability safeguards, and a published practitioner on everything from gender vulnerability to land rights and displacement. He joins us now to help unpack what Africa and Nigeria in particular truly needs for a just, inclusive, and realistic transition into a greener future. Dr. Allibay, welcome to Just Siri.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you. Good morning.
Good morning. Don't be nervous. It feels like you're a bit nervous. Are you nervous?
No,
Calm down. We don't bite.
Lola has been trying to mobilize him since the break.
Amazing. Oh, you know, it's always, I love intelligent people, and I like when young people come to their purpose very early, and it just makes me feel like, yes, this is the Nigeria that I look forward to, what I want my children to aspire to. We're very welcome, Dr.
And not telling us that they don't have to go to school.
Exactly.
They have to go to school and not to work.
All right. You know, Dr. Allibay, thank you very much for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
And let's just start with laying a foundation for this conversation. What we were looking at before you joined this discussion it's just generally part of it. We're discussing around this thing called just transition.
Yeah.
ESG, as well as the gendered aspect of what is going on, you know, everything under that umbrella. Yeah. So please, briefly, for the uninitiated, even though I what cult this is, especially the just transition cult, if there are a lot of people that are uninitiated, and some are even initiated, they don't know what it's all about. Please, can you educate us, enlighten us a little bit about where ESG fits in all of this?
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Bankole. I'm Dr. Bankole Allibay. I'm the CEO of TDL, Transatlantic Development Limited. We're a UK-based firm, and we also operate in about 11 countries across Africa. And also, another part of my life, I advise large corporates such as the World Bank, IFC, Asia Development Bank, and other multinational development institutions. So when we talk about ESG, sustainability, and just transition, one of the things, one of my recent academic materials that's going to be published sometimes later this month, what I was trying to unpack is actually to help people make sense of the buzzword in the last 2 decades. We have basically moved from margin to mainstream when we talk about sustainability discourse, because we've started from the point of talking about environmental health and safety guidelines to health and safety practice to sustainable development, to Millennium Development Goals, Sustainable Development Goals, to social investment. Now we're in ESG and so on. And a lot of people find it really very confusing. But one definition that has stood the test of time is the very generic definition of sustainability, which is development that meets the needs of today without compromising the needs of tomorrow. So where does ESG sit within that mix? And I'm going to further the line to get into the conversation on just transition. So when we say ESG, there are several definitions of ESG depending on who you ask. But I would say from a practical perspective that ESG in itself is the risk and impact component of the wider sustainability discourse. And what that means in plain language is that when you talk about sustainability, some people will say, oh, it's CSR. Some people will say, oh, it's social investment. Oh, it's ESG. Oh, it's stakeholder engagement. It's community participation. And all of these buzzwords don't end. So in my research, actually, I specialize in community participation in development projects. So I develop large infrastructure development projects. And where ESG fits in is the risk and impact component, not the good practice, not the philanthropy, not the market mix. Because a component like CSR, for example, is just a market mix that makes you do good and let people know about it. It's just a component of public relations. ESG is not a component of public relations. It's basically tackling the risk and impact component of the project development or program development head on. Now, where does just transition fix within this wider puzzle? Just transition is basically a transition process that happens like any energy transition or reorientation of a program or system in a fair and equitable manner. Of course, there's going to be a myriad of definitions around it, but let's think about it this way. We run a bakery in Agege or in Ikeja. This bakery uses 25 bunches of firewood every day. It has untarred floor, and then food is being produced there every day that is sold the whole of Ogba, Ikeja, and all of that, which means that the sanitation of the food is weak, the carbon emission is high, the quality of life of people that works there is also very low. Now, the transition to that process will mean that I bring in $1 million and I say, I don't want these people that have been working here for 10 years, they don't have very low hygiene, they don't understand how gas system works, they don't understand electricity. Move out, I hire new people who are fresh graduates and I put them into the place and digitize the process. Now, that's a transition. So how is that different from just transition? Just transition is basically now creating a fair and equitable system in which the people that exist there at the moment, we can tell them, okay, you don't have the right qualification to work here, so we're going to give you a 6-month period in which you're going to go through a training program.
To upskill you.
We're going to train you on how to manage the systems because we don't want to run the system anymore with firewood. We now want to have a gas burner. We want to have electricity systems. So we're going to teach you on how to run this system. You still retain your job, you get upskilled, your skill level is improved, the sanitation of the area is improved, and then everybody grows with the system. Nobody gets left behind in the course of the process. So that is the difference between an ordinary transition process, which is basically like optimization in process management, which is another part of my life, in process optimization. But just transition looks at the total picture and ensuring that we're not just improving the system, we're also improving the people along the same line.
Wow. That's, see, so I've been involved in the conversation around climate change, and this is probably the best example I've ever heard of just transition, in all honesty. That's fantastic. Let's
Thank you.
Education. I mean, the initiative is a beautiful one. It's just that sometimes when it comes to these kind of conversations, there's always something missing within the African context. So when global institutions and governments are talking about a just transition, what is often missing in the conversation, especially when applied to African reality?
So, many years ago, when I was doing my Doctor of Practice, I have this mindset because my background is in literature. I studied theater arts first degree before I went to sustainable development and then I have a PhD in development and a Doctor of Practice. And one thing I've learned working in over 40 countries across about 6 continents is the fact that development is much a cultural issue as it is an economic issue. You can never find a fisherman that lives on top of a mountain. And you can't find a climber that lives by the sea. So the reality of the environment in which people exist determines what constitutes development to them. It is not skyscrapers in Geneva or tall buildings in New York City. A fisherman in Awodikora or in Buguma might be happier than somebody who lives in a penthouse in California.
Absolutely.
And if you read Development is Freedom by Amartya Sen, published in 1999, you understand that the concept of development is freedom. It's basically freedom to do what you want to do within the confines of the rules of the society. Now let's come to the conversation about Africa. So what is missing in just transition in Africa? A lot of people disagree with me on this. Europe is actually built at the back of a lot of pillaging from other parts of the world.
No, we do not disagree with you.
Sorry, I think I'm in awe.
So if someone has built 200,000 houses for over a century, and they have everything sorted, they have 100% electricity penetration, 100% facility running, and that person said, oh, you stop your development and let's green it up. My first response is no. I know a lot of people disagree with me because I'm a sustainability expert and I should be talking to the narrative. But then when it comes to Africa, we need to look at what constitutes development for us.
And what we need.
What we need. What is our need? Yes. For example, in 2002, 2003, when I started practicing, gas is seen as a fossil fuel. But the moment there is war in some parts of Europe and then Europe is getting into trouble, all of a sudden gas becomes a clean energy. And now, gas is being touted as a clean energy. And even some countries in Europe have started burning coal. And you're asking us not to. I would say we should do what is worth it for us to develop, one. And what is missing in just transition in Africa is for us to look inward. I was making an analysis with some of my researchers, I think about a month ago, and I was saying that we cannot fully implement a just transition with a dependent economy. And what does that mean? We cannot be sustainable, we cannot be productive and say we want to put solar panels everywhere, we want to use off-grid solution, we can't do that if we don't produce these things.
And where is the infrastructure to be built on it?
Exactly. So we need knowledge. There should be a meeting within the town and gown. All the institutions in Nigeria that are into research, that are into technological development, we need to come up with solutions that can actually solve our local problem.
Yes.
What is missing is our local problem, is our local intelligence, our local knowledge. Because what is happening to us is that we talk about renewable energy, and oftentimes it's impact, what do you call it, impact geography. Impact geography simply means that you want to buy this tablet, and then this tablet is made of plastic, and that plastic kills people down the line. But because you don't see that this plastic kills people, you just buy the tablet.
Because it doesn't kill the people around you.
Around you. So impact geography naturally makes you feel like, well, it's sustainable, it's not my people that are being killed. That's what impact geography is, and that's exactly the problem that we're having, because we still rely significantly on solar panels that has been made in Bulgaria, been made in Russia, been made in China, been shipped down to us, made in Singapore, shipped down to us at a price, which means that we're dependent on those economies to get solar panel, one. Number two, this solar panel can only attract photovoltaic energy, daytime. If you don't store them, once the sunlight stops, the power goes off, which means you need battery. Battery requires copper, nickel, lithium, and so many other materials. Some of these materials which we have, but we don't process, which means we need to buy them.
Dr. Allibay, hold on, I have to go. We're going to take a quick time out, but it's really important in this conversation for us to realize that around 600 million Africans still do not have access to consistent, reliable, steady electricity. Yet, we want to have the transition to renewables. Let's think about that as we take a break. We'll be back.
You're still watching Jasira News Central. If you're late to the conversation, don't worry, you can still catch up. We are at News Central TV. Dr. Allibay is still with us in the studio. We are being educated this morning, but I love it because we're talking about a just transition and the race to cut emissions and focus on greener and cleaner energy. So I'm going to shift a bit and focus on something that doesn't really concern us. We didn't cause climate change in Africa, did we?
Not really.
Okay.
So, okay, go ahead. Yeah.
So now, how do we're struggling because we have to move from this narrative that we have to decarbonize. And don't laugh now, man. This narrative that we have to decarbonize and restructure our economies. Okay, so now we are inundated and overwhelmed by this historical. We have a lot of. There's so many. It's like people following us from our village, people following us. We have so many. There's the narrative of historical injustice, and we know that the West built where they are today on the backs of Africa. My question would be that how do we balance this historical injustice and future responsibility as we try to find our way to cleaner energy?
First of all, I would like to start with a caveat, and the caveat is that climate change is evident all around us, but nature has a way of balancing itself. From a data perspective, Africa generates just about 4–5% of the entire global greenhouse gas. And in reality, this greenhouse gas, as against what anybody can think, is generated in the urban areas. Right? Now, if you stand anywhere, either you're standing in Dar es Salaam, you're standing in Ikeja in Lagos or Victoria Island, or you're standing in Lubumbashi, or you're standing in Lusaka, you cannot see 12 V8 by turbo pass in urban areas, no matter how that city is. Yeah. Neither would you see any factory that generates 200 million kilograms of CO2 per hour. So again, the CO2 is generated in the West, and then we're paying the price. Now, where do we sit when it comes to trying to balance our reality now, and how do we want to prepare for the future? Yeah. So balancing our reality now, like I said at the beginning of this conversation, is basically looking at what exactly concerns us. Everybody talks about climate change being responsible for shrinking of the ozone layer, it's shrinking the water content in River Niger, it's causing acidification and so on and so forth. But people haven't paused to think about it, that when people cut down trees in River Niger, they're cutting it out of poverty. They're not cutting it to make fancy furniture. And they're not cutting it to do a balcony that will look like a mahogany balcony or something. When people cut trees to do charcoal, it's survival.
It's firewood.
It's firewood to cook food, to eat. Yeah. So now, when we begin to talk about them and say like, oh, they're not sustainable, we need to start using gas and all of that, let's even pause empirically. Gas in itself, what level of drilling happens to get gas? What level of drilling happens to get lithium? What level of drilling happens to get cobalt, to get nickel, to get all of these precious metals that we're talking about? So yes, we need to take responsibility for the fact that there is a climate change and it is affecting our world. But I would say Africa needs to take a step back and think about what it means for Africa. And what does that mean? What it means is that we cannot use the parameters that the West used to measure their carbon emission for ourselves. That is not correct. That is wrong. We don't live in Germany and we don't live in Australia. We live in Africa. So our reality is different. We need to evolve information and data that responds to our daily needs. And what that means expressly is that if you look at the map of Nigeria and you look at our Sahelian borders, if you look at the northern part of the River Niger, if you take out from the Taraba axis and you go upward from Taraba, Adamawa, and then you go northeast that way, you see you have a green belt from the Mambila Plateau, comes down to the River Niger, and then it goes like that till you get to the Niger belt and Bida axis, then it crosses to the belt of River Niger, the Benue, like that. Downward is greener than the north.
Yeah.
Okay? So you can't explain it to us that we that live in Lagos, we that live in Ogun, we that live in Cross River, we have the same situation as people who live in Agadez in Mali. We don't. We live in two different belts. And the people in Calabar are not responsible for extreme weather in Agadez. So these are some of the things that we need to learn. We need to actually create these situations as it fits for us.
Absolutely.
And that means we need a lot of data. We cannot benchmark on the data that's been supplied by a third party.
Yeah. Why not?
Why not? Because look, data-driven development simply means that you are making decisions based on evidential information.
Yeah. Is it that we don't trust the data, or it's not enough? That's because
number one, the data does not exist.
Okay.
Being honest, the data does not exist.
Let him get
and the reason why I say data does not exist is that if you go to Nigeria Bureau of Statistics today, with all due respect, I doubt if they have the meteorological data of what the temperature is in Oshodi market, Akmogbo market, like the major confluence markets in Nigeria. I doubt if they have it. Now, if they don't have that,
you can't even track.
You can't track historically.
Yes.
You can't tell me what the changes are. And if you don't tell me what the changes are, what gives us the impression that this 1.5%, 1.2% increment that people are talking about really is in my village?
Yeah. Will affect you. Yeah.
But what is affecting us not gathering data? Because I'm wondering that do we not have enough manpower, or we don't have the equipment to do that?
Or we don't believe it's important.
Or we don't believe it's important enough, because every day on my phone there is droppings of weather, when it's going to rain. I can see a little bit of meteorological whatever. So what do we need?
And before you answer that, and I'll add to it because I've been following this very closely. They said last year was the hottest year on record ever, based on data. 2023.
Which data?
Their own data. Maybe not for
Which
us.
data?
From the World Meteorology.
Okay.
Then they said 2023 was the hottest year on record before that. Then 2020. So like since the 2020s, every single year, according to the data, has become the hottest year on record.
So generally, I know again this is another unpopular opinion, but I'll say it anyways. The Western narrative when it comes to sustainability discourse over the last 2 decades has been very intense. And there's a lot of misinformation. And this misinformation is basically targeted at
the Global South.
The Global South, and particularly emerging economies. Because look, how many transitions actually happens in Europe, really? How many transitions happens in America? How many transitions happen in North America and South America? How many of it? So people pressurizing us to lower our carbon emission at 4%.
To keep our crude oil in the ground.
To keep our crude oil in the ground and the poverty reading, and then continue to beg for aid that is not sustainable, which is even now being closed down. Like in 2025, it's wrong. It's morally wrong. So when we begin to make these announcements, look, I work in sustainability. I've worked in sustainability all my life, and I can tell you for a fact that the narrative is totally different. We say something, okay, let's put this out there for people to listen to. Somebody's coming to tell us about climate change in Nigeria and is flying Gulfstream 460 from Washington, D.C. with 8 people to Nigeria. And then he gets into the country, he's driving a V8 by turbo all around the country. And then he flies that same thing back
What's sustainable in that?
More? What is sustainable in that? Exactly. Who emitted more?
Everything that we as a continent.
Physics question in exam.
You should say the question in exam.
So the point is that let us grow, but sustainably in our own way. So, for example, there are one of the research material that I'm writing right at the moment, it's going to be published sometime before the end of this year, is about basically, because we have to start from the basics. So it's basically about segmentation of what the sustainability discourse is. So we have the upstream, we have the midstream, we have the downstream. But oftentimes, the part of sustainability that we all hear and talk about is the very downstream and the pedestrian one. Energy transition, climate change, gender involved, renewable energy, a little bit of safety, disability, which are very important as well. But then there are fundamental environmental and social risk issues, which are upstream sustainability discourse. For example, land acquisition and involuntary resettlement is a big issue.
See, that land acquisition, I don't think many Africans have clocked how big corporations are buying up land on the continent. That's water resources as well, correct?
Yes, land acquisition and involuntary resettlement, water and wastewater management and resources. You're talking about involuntary displacement, livelihood destruction, vulnerabilities of different kind of sorts. I mean, if you look at some parts of Nigeria, between Osun and Oyo State, in terms of devastation that has happened to cocoa forest, to cocoa forest, to palm kernel forest by artisanal mining and unauthorized mining, you will be shocked. And then everybody just talk about climate change and gender, and then they jump off. The real upstream issues staring us in the face, nobody's talking about it.
I want to ask, I think maybe what might be a controversial question. I've heard a few people. Do you believe that we should continue exploring for crude? So we have what we have, and there's always the conversation as to what is left in the ground, what Nigeria can still explore for. Do you think we should still continue exploring for crude? Because what we're told is that there's a timeline limit to when crude will become, crude will no longer be a valuable asset on the global stage. Talk about that time limit. Is it realistic? And then also, should we continue to explore for crude? But please hold on. They said we have a break. Let's take a quick time now. The conversation has veered, but it's veered in a good way. When we come back, we'll talk about, is crude still a viable option for a country like Nigeria? Stay with us.
Yeah.
Thanks for staying with us on Just Here. We're still talking about just transition, and we transitioned the conversation away from the script, but in a good way. And before the break, Tolu was asking our guest, Dr. Allibay, if crude is still a viable option, and if not, what else are we relying on, or should we be looking to rely on? So, Dr. Allibay, I'm just going to allow you to answer that.
Okay, so I'm a development liberalist, and what that means is that I believe that development comes at a cost. So no matter the level of development you want to attain, there should be some trade-offs, there would be sacrifices. Yes, the answer is we should continue to explore our crude. That's what we have. I mean, people are still exploring for iron ore in England. So why can't we just explore our crude?
What happens when we run out of crude?
Well, so we need to build a society that can actually withstand the test of time. And it is not in our resources that is built. That is in our human capacity. It is not our resources. Let me say that again. Our resources, our wealth as a nation, as country, Nigeria, it is not crude oil. Crude oil is...
know that.
I know that for a fact. I am saying, I'm just saying that the amount of crude that we have, it's, okay, I'll give you an example. How many crude is there in the United Kingdom?
Barely any.
How many crude is there in Germany? Exactly. So I am saying again that it's like a father that has $10 billion and he has 20 children, and he didn't send them to school, he didn't train them in any skill, and they just wake up every day and start eating. Once he dies, even if you have a house full of money, his children will finish spending that money, and in 2-3 generations they're likely going to be begging. Okay, that's exactly what the crude looks like. So for me, drilling crude is not even a question. It's what exactly do we do with the crude?
So what do we do?
What are we building with the crude?
What are we building?
We need to build high-end infrastructure.
What does high-end mean? Because everybody is shouting about train and rail right now.
So it's not just train, it's just rail, it's also systems. For example, we have billions and billions of dollars in infrastructure deficits in Nigeria. If you look at the map of Nigeria, there's not a single ring road in the whole of Nigeria. There's not one road that if I start here, I can drive around Nigeria and come back to point A. It doesn't exist. We need that. That needs to, that as a matter of urgency, that needs to be built. Not just road, it has to be road, rail, it has to be, I mean, like, if you're in Bank in central London, you can take a DLR to Stratford. You can take a DLR to Lewisham. You can take it. You can DLR. I'm not talking about underground. Then you have overground. Then you have other mini rails and all of that. And I'm not just using London as an example. In other economies globally, it's the same thing. So we need to build infrastructure. Infrastructure. The government has no business in saying that I want to employ 3 million people. No. Build the system and make the system function. So let's drill our crude. Let's continue to produce the crude until we get whatever we want. However, at the back of that, development comes at a cost, but that cost needs to be very well managed. We need to stop all this idea of drilling without proper impact assessments, without impact management, remediation procedure, closure, and that means that the handlers of this system, first of all, need to be educated about the risk and impact, because I don't still feel, well, in some part of my head, I don't still feel that they understand the full way,
implementation,
the full way of spillage.
Because I'm looking at if they did, we have cleaned up Ogoni by now.
Exactly.
We would have cleaned up Ogoni by now.
So think about the vessel. Think about this vessel just having a damage. For every 1 liter,
the livelihood,
exactly,
of the people,
the biodiversity. Even if you're talking about life, people can move. People that have mobility, skill mobility can move. What about the destruction of the ecosystem services?
So you even say people with skills can move. A lot of these people don't have skills.
Let's assume they have skill, and they can move. What about the ecosystem services? And let me tell you what that means. Water spills here, 10 kilometers down the line, the snails that people pick up to come and sell to us in the market dies. So those people that are there, what are they going to eat?
You know, let's even let's hear you, because I'm hearing some of the bits and things that they're saying, and I know that women are the forefront of many of this.
Leave women. I want them to come back to face women. We'll face the gender aspect of this. We can't even start. So there was a part of me that when we were looking at this about the donor agenda. You're laughing. So I hit something. The donor agenda. You talked about us being given terminology, phrasing, ideas from the global north to the global south. But we hear a lot about the donor agenda. If you talk about the donor agenda, they promised, I think, was it 100 million in 10 years or something like that. I don't even think we got barely 10 million from the same people who are quote unquote causing the issues, who are supposed to give remedial money to countries like in Africa. We have some slides that show the cost of disasters, climate-related disasters. There have been several cyclones, there's been flooding. We're talking about millions of people across the continent that have died, that have been displaced. I asked them to just do in the past 5 years. But it's not even in the past 5 years. In the East Africa, they've been on a, what's that thing called? The one where everything is dry. Oh my God.
Drought.
Drought for how many years now? Southern parts of Africa, infestation with the locusts as well that killed all the crops. You also have southern parts of Africa that have been flooded. So we see the effects of all of this. So let's talk about the donor agenda now. Their agenda is not our agenda, obviously.
So maybe I'm going to be biased in this conversation, and it's because, number one, I actually don't believe in donor-driven economies at all. And it's because I work in resettlement. I do high-end resettlement, like large scale. So I did a project called the West African Backbone Corridor from Ivory Coast to Ghana, Ghana to Burkina Faso. It's 2,000 kilometer right of way. We supported the Kano Maradi project from Jigawa to Kano, Katina to Niger Republic. I did the Geita Yakanazi from Tanzania to Rwanda, like large-scale project like that. And when you look at projects in that area, people in the donor sector always say, oh, this is wrong, you can't do this, you can't do that. And that's where I would take my biased perspective from, and I would address it head-on. Number one, there is no country that has become wealthy at the back of donor fund.
Can you please say that again for our politicians?
Wow. There is no country that has become wealthy or successful at the back of donor funding. It does not exist anywhere. Donor fund is basically like, it's like a quick fix for something. Oh, during COVID, oh, we had so much problem. We need to build a stay center for people to If you inject donor fund for that, that's fantastic, that's good. But that you want to use donor fund to resuscitate hospital, to resuscitate healthcare, education, childcare, reduction in mortality rate, it's a failed agenda because number one, who contributes to these donor agencies? Large, big farmers. So the large farmers contribute, I don't want to mention name, gives you 100 billion to run a particular health agenda for polio, right? You think that big farmer will not send in their medication? So they give you $10 billion, they supply you $6 billion worth of drugs, and then you hook on that drug. And then when you're done with the fund, you pay almost 60 billion in return trying to buy the same drug to get fixed, to get whole again.
Actually.
So when we run it that way, the donor economy is unsustainable. I know a lot of people are crying all over the world now about, oh, why did you drop this? Look, let's face it. It is not just the global south that benefit from the donor fund.
From the donor economy.
From the donor economy. The bigger part of the donor fund stays where it came from.
All right, Dr. Allibay, we have to wrap up now. I want to say thank you so much for joining us.
He's coming back.
Yeah, I know, definitely. He's one of those. He's one of those our guests that come back, and it's not just something of today. It's a topic that deserves attention, more attention than we give it in Nigeria, guys. This is where we draw the curtain on the show for today. Don't forget to join us on radio later today. We'll be on Wazobia FM 95.1 at 2 p.m. and then we'll be on 99.3 Nigeria Info at 2:45 p.m. today. Please tune in. Make sure you don't miss it. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Doctor, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.